Welcome to the Pardesh channel. Today, we explain Genesis chapter 37 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're picking up the story right where Jacob has finally settled back into the land of Canaan. He's been looking for some peace and quiet after years of intense struggles with his brother Esau and his father-in-law Laban. But as we're about to see, the peace he's desperately hoping for, well, it's about to be completely shattered, and the disruption is going to come from inside his very own tent. The focus of our narrative is about to shift directly onto his sons, and specifically, we're introduced to a young man named Joseph.
Let's take a quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at Jacob's favoritism in Joseph, then Joseph's two provocative dreams. After that, we'll follow the journey to Dothan, uncover the plot and the pit, see how he is sold into Egypt, and finally, we'll wrap up with the key lessons we can learn from Genesis 37.
All right, let's dive into part 1, Jacob's favoritism and Joseph.
So the text paints this really vivid picture for us right out of the gate in verses 1 through 4. Picture this. Joseph is just 17 years old. He's out there working the flocks alongside his half-brothers, specifically the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. Now, these particular brothers were often looked down upon by the rest of the family, so the dynamic is already a bit tense. And right away, Joseph causes some serious friction. He brings what the Hebrew text calls a dibatam ra'ah, a bad report, about his brothers back to their father Jacob. Basically, he's tattling. And this act of bringing back bad reports to the patriarch immediately establishes deep sibling resentment. It really sows the early seeds of division among the brothers.
Now, Jacob, who is also known as Israel, reacts to this family dynamic in a way that honestly just makes the division so much worse. Because Joseph was born to him in his old age, Jacob loves him more than any of his other sons. And to show this blatant favoritism, he gives Joseph a very special garment. In Hebrew, this is called a ketonet pasim. You've probably heard it translated as a coat of many colors, but it actually refers to a long, richly ornamented tunic with sleeves that reach all the way down to the palms and the soles of the feet. This was a garment of nobility. It was a sign of royalty, and it sent a very clear message. Joseph was completely exempt from the hard, physical, sweaty labor that his brothers were enduring out in the fields. This visible, everyday symbol isolates Joseph completely. The text is incredibly blunt here, telling us that his brothers hated him so deeply they literally couldn't even speak a single kind word to him.
Moving right along to section 2, Joseph's two provocative dreams.
So, into this highly combustible, hostile environment, Joseph decides it's a great idea to share a dream he had. It's a very specific, agricultural vision. He tells his brothers, "Listen, we were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf stood upright, while all of your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to mine." You can imagine how well this goes over. This dream deeply infuriates them. Beyond the sheer arrogance they see in his words, the agricultural imagery itself is super important. Remember, they are nomadic shepherds. They deal with animals. Yet this dream revolves entirely around farming and harvesting grain. This actually directly foreshadows the agricultural economy of Egypt, where, spoiler alert, his brothers will indeed eventually bow down to him for food.
But wait, Joseph doesn't stop there. He has a second dream, and this one is sweeping in its scope. It's a cosmic dream. He tells them that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were all bowing down to him. The symbolism here is unmistakable, right? The sun represents his father Jacob, the moon represents a mother figure, and the 11 stars? Those are his 11 brothers. This vision is so incredibly bold that when he tells his father and brothers, Jacob actually scolds him openly. He asks him, "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" But the text points out a really crucial psychological detail right after this. While his brothers are just burning with intense jealousy, Jacob actually keeps the matter in mind. He secretly recognizes that dreams like this might carry some profound prophetic weight.
Now we arrive at section 3, the journey to Dothan.
In verses 12 through 17, the setting shifts. Jacob, who is back home in the valley of Hebron, asks Joseph to go check on his brothers who are grazing their flocks near a place called Shechem. Now, you have to understand, this is not just a quick stroll down the street. Traveling from Hebron to Shechem is a long, extremely dangerous, multi-day journey covering about 50 miles. On top of that, Shechem is the exact location where Joseph's older brothers, Simeon and Levi, had previously massacred an entire city. So it's a highly hostile, volatile region for their family. This kind of highlights his strangely oblivious nature in Jacob, doesn't it? He's sending his favored, deeply hated son out completely alone to check on his angry older brothers. So, Joseph heads out, gets lost wandering in the fields, until a random stranger points him further north to a place called Dothan. Joseph keeps walking, moving further and further away from his father's immediate protection.
Which brings us to section 4, the plot and the pit.
The brothers spot Joseph approaching from a distance, and before he even reaches them, all that simmering jealousy just boils over into deadly action. They mockingly call him the Baal Chalamot, which literally translates to the master of dreams in Hebrew. Right then and there, they conspire to murder him. The plan is to throw his body into a cistern and just concoct a lie that a ferocious animal devoured him. Their explicit stated goal is to kill him to stop his grand visions from ever coming true. But there's a really heavy, tragic irony here. They are completely unaware that these exact actions, their plot to stop the dreams, will be the very thing that sets the wheels of those dreams directly into motion.
Then the narrative takes a sudden shift. Reuben, the oldest brother, steps in. He tells the others, "Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood." So instead of outright hands-on murder, Reuben convinces them to just throw Joseph into a desert cistern without actually laying a violent hand on him. Now, as the firstborn, Reuben is ultimately the one held responsible for the lives of his younger brothers. His secret motive here is to stall for time. He's hoping he can sneak back later, pull Joseph out of the pit, and bring him safely back home to their father, maybe hoping to regain some favor he had previously lost in the family.
The second Joseph arrives, a really rapid, harsh sequence unfolds. First, they violently strip him of his ketanet pasim, that deeply hated, richly ornamented tunic that screamed favoritism. Second, they literally cast him down into the cistern. And third, the text deliberately repeats a terrifying little detail. The cistern was completely empty. There was absolutely no water in it. On a simple, literal level, the pashhat level, this tells us he wouldn't drown. But what it actually means is he would face immediate death by starvation and thirst. It's a slow, deliberate kind of cruelty inflicted by his very own flesh and blood.
This leads us to section 5, sold into Egypt. After tossing their own brother into a dark hole to die, the brothers do something that is just incredibly chilling. Verse 25 tells us they simply sit down to eat a meal. They're sitting there eating bread, completely ignoring the terrified pleas of their younger brother, which, by the way, is a detail we don't actually learn about until Genesis chapter 42. Anyway, while they're having this cold-hearted lunch, they look up and spot a caravan of Ishmaelite and Midianite traveling merchants approaching from Gilead. Their camels are loaded down with gum, balm, and myrrh. These are typical, highly valuable luxury trade goods that were on their way down to the bustling markets of Egypt.
Seeing this caravan, Judah speaks up with a calculating new idea. He essentially appeals to their greed and maybe a twisted sense of conscience. He argues that there's just no profit in murder. He says, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood?" It's a remarkably cold, calculated business proposition regarding how to dispose of a sibling. He suggests they just sell Joseph to the merchants instead, noting pragmatically, "After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And the brothers quickly agree to this mercantile alternative.
So when the Midianite merchants come by, the brothers pull Joseph up out of that dry cistern, and they sell him to the Ishmaelites for exactly 20 shekels of silver. Now this is a really profound historical detail. In the ancient Near East, 20 shekels of silver was the exact standard market price for a young male slave. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, a beloved, favored son is traded away as literal property, cementing his terrifying new status as a slave bound for Egypt. Now, Reuben was apparently absent when this brutal sale went down. When he finally sneaks back to the cistern and discovers it's empty, he is absolutely devastated. He tears his clothes. This was an ancient, visceral mourning custom that demonstrated a profound, physical reaction to unimaginable grief. He runs to his brothers in total shock, crying out, "The boy isn't there! Where can I turn now?" His secret, desperate plan to be the hero and save Joseph has completely fallen apart.
So now the brothers face a terrifying new problem. How on earth do they explain Joseph's disappearance to their father? To cover up their massive betrayal, they execute an incredibly cruel deception. They take Joseph's ornamented robe, they slaughter a goat, and they dip the robe completely in the animal's blood. Then, they carry this ruined, bloody garment all the way back to Jacob, presenting it to him and asking him to examine it. The literary irony here is incredibly thick if you look back at the family history. Decades earlier, Jacob deceived his own father, Isaac, by using the skins of a goat. And now, measure for measure, his own sons are deceiving him using the blood of a goat. Jacob instantly recognizes the robe. He cries out, "It is my son's robe!" And he immediately concludes the exact lie they want him to believe, that a ferocious animal has torn Joseph to pieces.
Jacob tears his clothes, puts on sackcloth, and mourns for his son for many, many days. He completely refuses all comfort from his family, declaring, "No, in mourning will I go down to the grave to my son." The Hebrew word used here for the grave is Sheol, referring to the underworld or the realm of the dead. Jacob's refusal to be comforted is so profound because, without a body to bury, a grieving father is left with absolutely no closure.
The chapter concludes with a stark, jarring reality that contrasts so heavily with Jacob's desperate weeping in Canaan. While his father sits there believing his son was torn to shreds, the text tells us exactly what is actually happening. The Midianites arrive down in Egypt, and they sell Joseph to a man named Potiphar. Potiphar is a high-ranking official of Pharaoh. He's the captain of the guard, essentially the chief executioner. This incredibly powerful title sets up the immense danger and the incredibly high stakes that Joseph is going to face in the upcoming chapters.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Lessons from Genesis 37.
Before we wrap up this explainer, let's step back and look at the practical life lessons and the key simple ideas we can really take away from these events. We started out with the father's favorite son, safe in Hebron. We watched his arrogant dreams bred deadly jealousy. We followed a terrifying betrayal at a dry pit in Dothan. And we ended with a bloody robe and a son sold into slavery down in Egypt. From all of this, we clearly see the immense dangers of blatant favoritism. A father's overt preference for one child over the others severely fractured the entire family foundation. We also witnessed the destructive nature of unchecked jealousy, showing us just how quickly everyday envy can escalate into unthinkable betrayal. We see how poor communication and a bit of arrogance can breed deep, deep resentment. And finally, we witness the tragic consequences of deceit. A single lie about a bloody robe caused a father years of unimaginable, unnecessary grief. It really makes you think about the ripple effects of our actions.
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.